Control is often mistaken for strength. Many men believe that if they say the right things, act the right way, or manage a woman's emotions carefully enough, they will gain power in the relationship. What actually happens is the opposite. The more you seek control, the more you give it away. This audiobook is not about tactics, manipulation, or winning arguments. It is about becoming a man whose inner state cannot be pulled, pressured, or played. A man who cannot be controlled is not distant or cold. He is grounded. His emotions are regulated. His decisions come from values rather than fear. He does not chase certainty, validation, or reassurance. Because of this, his presence carries weight. Control loses relevance when there is nothing reactive to grab onto. Most relationship problems begin long before conflict appears. They begin with emotional dependence. When your mood, confidence, or direction depends on how someone else feels about you, leverage shifts away from you. You start negotiating your behavior. You explain yourself too much. You tolerate things that erode self-respect. Attraction fades not because of a single mistake, but because stability disappears. This book is about reversing that pattern. You will learn how emotional self-command creates respect without force. You will understand why detachment does not mean indifference and why boundaries do not require hostility. You will see how calm consistency outperforms intensity, and why a life built around purpose is impossible to control. Becoming the man she cannot control does not mean dominating her. It means mastering yourself. When your emotions are steady and your standards are clear, dynamics shift naturally. You stop trying to manage outcomes and start embodying direction. From that place, attraction is not demanded or chased, it is a response. Control loses its grip over time, naturally.
Chapter 1. The Illusion of Control. Control in relationships is rarely taken by force. It is offered through reaction. The moment your emotions are easily triggered, explained, or redirected, control has already shifted. Many men believe control comes from asserting authority, setting rules, or proving dominance. In reality, control comes from access. Whoever can move your emotional state can influence your behavior. This is why attempts to control others so often backfire. They reveal investment, urgency, and fear of loss. Control cannot coexist with desperation. It collapses under neediness. True leverage appears when you no longer require a specific outcome to remain grounded. Control is given when you seek reassurance, argue to be understood, or change your behavior to avoid discomfort. Each of these actions signals that your internal stability depends on external approval. This dependency creates predictability. Predictability creates leverage for the other person. When your reactions follow familiar patterns, they become easy to manage, provoke, or dismiss. The illusion of control convinces men that if they just try harder, communicate better, or hold on tighter, the dynamic will improve. What actually improves dynamics is removing emotional hooks. When your mood does not rise and fall based on attention, validation, or conflict, influence fades. Not because you withdraw, but because there is nothing to grab. This is why calm men appear powerful without effort. Their stability cannot be negotiated. Control is always given through reaction, not taken through force. The man who understands this stops trying to manage the other person and starts managing himself. He notices when he is tempted to chase clarity, closure, or reassurance and chooses restraint instead. This restraint is not passive, it is intentional. Over time, emotional self-containment removes leverage from others automatically. Control dissolves when your inner state is no longer accessible on demand. What replaces it is respect, curiosity, and space. The illusion ends the moment you realize that control was never something to seize, it was something to stop handing away. Emotional reactions are the most common form of leverage in relationships, yet they are rarely recognized as such. When your emotions are easily provoked, explained, or soothed by someone else, you hand them influence over your behavior. This leverage does not require malice or intent. It emerges naturally when your inner state depends on external input. Many men confuse emotional expression with honesty, believing that explaining feelings will restore balance. In reality, excessive emotional exposure often creates imbalance by revealing where pressure can be applied. Reactions signal importance. When something consistently provokes frustration, jealousy, or anxiety, it marks a point of attachment. Attachment creates sensitivity. Sensitivity creates leverage. Over time, this dynamic becomes predictable. Certain words, silences, or behaviors reliably trigger the same response. Predictability reduces respect and increases control. Emotional leverage does not come from cruelty, it comes from responsiveness. The faster and stronger the reaction, the more power it grants. This is why arguments escalate and why reassurance becomes addictive. Each reaction reinforces the pattern. The solution is not suppression, it is regulation. Emotional regulation creates delay between stimulus and response. That delay restores choice. When you no longer react immediately, leverage weakens. Silence replaces explanation. Observation replaces defense. Calm replaces urgency. This shift often feels uncomfortable at first because it removes familiar emotional exchanges. But discomfort is the cost of reclaiming self-command. A regulated man still feels emotion, but he does not broadcast it impulsively or act on it prematurely. He allows intensity to pass before deciding what deserves response. This restraint changes dynamics quietly. Emotional reactions lose their usefulness as tools of influence. Conversations slow down. Conflicts lose momentum. Control attempts fall flat because they have nothing to move. Over time, emotional stability becomes visible. It signals strength without display. Others adjust naturally to this steadiness. Leverage fades not through confrontation, but through absence. When emotional reactions are no longer accessible on demand, control loses its foundation. What remains is mutual respect built on autonomy rather than manipulation. Chapter 2. Neediness is the real weakness. Validation seeking is one of the most subtle forms of neediness, and it quietly erodes attraction over time. It does not always look desperate or insecure on the surface. Often it appears as excessive agreement, constant availability, over-explaining intentions, or seeking reassurance through words and behavior. At its core, validation seeking is the habit of outsourcing your sense of worth. When approval becomes a requirement rather than a bonus, power shifts immediately. Attraction relies on autonomy. The moment your confidence depends on someone else's response, curiosity fades and leverage grows on the other side. Validation seeking also distorts behavior. You begin optimizing for acceptance rather than alignment. Decisions are made to avoid discomfort instead of to honor standards. This creates inconsistency. One day you're confident, the next you're accommodating. This unpredictability does not create mystery, it creates instability. Emotional stability is what allows attraction to deepen. Neediness interrupts that process.
Another hidden cost of validation seeking is resentment. When approval is pursued and not returned in equal measure, frustration builds. This frustration leaks through tone, body language, and passive behavior. What began as a desire to connect turns into pressure. Pressure suffocates attraction. A man with psychological self-command does not reject validation. He simply does not depend on it. Compliments are received without hunger. Disinterest is tolerated without collapse. Silence is not interpreted as rejection. This neutrality restores balance. Validation becomes optional rather than necessary. When approval is no longer chased, behavior stabilizes. Words become measured. Actions become intentional. Presence becomes calm. This calm signals self-sufficiency. Self-sufficiency is attractive because it removes obligation. It allows desire to arise freely rather than under demand. The fastest way to weaken attraction is to seek confirmation of it. The fastest way to strengthen it is to remove the need for confirmation entirely. When your sense of worth is internal, validation loses its grip. What remains is authenticity, and authenticity is far more compelling than approval seeking ever could be.
Detachment is often misunderstood as indifference, emotional distance, or lack of care. In reality, healthy detachment is the ability to stay connected without being dependent. It is presence without attachment to outcome. Many men swing between two extremes. They either cling emotionally or withdraw completely. Both behaviors are driven by fear. Psychological advantage lies in the middle ground, where engagement exists without self-abandonment. Detachment without coldness begins with emotional ownership. Your feelings are acknowledged internally, not outsourced for management. You do not require constant reassurance to remain steady. This allows you to show interest without urgency and care without pressure. Interest expressed freely is attractive. Interest expressed with expectation is heavy. The difference is subtle but decisive. Detachment also removes the need to control responses. When you are detached, you do not monitor every word, delay, or shift in tone for hidden meaning. You respond to what is present, not what you fear might be coming. This reduces overthinking and restores calm. Calm presence is grounding. It creates safety without submission. Another key element is tolerance for space. Space is not absence, it is breathing room. Men who fear detachment often fear losing connection. Ironically, suffocating connection is what causes distance. When you allow space naturally, attraction has room to grow. Detachment does not mean you suppress standards or ignore behavior that matters. It means you address issues without emotional charge. Boundaries are communicated calmly or enforced through action rather than argument. This signals self-respect. Detachment without coldness also protects you from emotional manipulation. When your inner state remains steady regardless of reaction, control attempts lose power. You are no longer pulled into cycles of reassurance or conflict. Over time, this steadiness becomes visible. Others sense that your interest is genuine but not needy. That combination is rare. It creates polarity without games and connection without dependency. When you are present but not attached, you remain centered. From that place, attraction can exist without control, and connection can deepen without compromise.
Chapter 3. Emotional Self-Command. Emotional self-command begins in the body before it ever reaches the mind. Most men try to control emotions through logic, explanation, or suppression, but emotion is physiological first. When your nervous system is overstimulated, reasoning collapses and reaction takes over. This is why calm thinking disappears during conflict, pressure, or perceived loss. Mastery starts with learning how to regulate your internal state instead of arguing with it. The nervous system responds to threat, whether the danger is real or imagined. A delayed text, A cold tone or uncertainty can trigger the same stress response as physical risk. Heart rate rises, breathing shortens, and the urge to act intensifies. In these moments, control is lost not because of weakness, but because the body is signaling urgency. Psychological advantage comes from recognizing this signal and slowing it down. Breathing is the most direct lever. Slow, deep breaths signal safety to the nervous system and reduce arousal. Posture matters as well. A relaxed, upright stance sends different information to the brain than tension or collapse. These adjustments seem simple, but they interrupt emotional escalation at its source. Over time, repeated regulation trains your system to recover faster. Triggers lose intensity because the body no longer treats them as emergencies. Mastery also requires reducing chronic stimulation. Constant exposure to stress, conflict, and distraction keeps the nervous system activated, making emotional control harder. Men with self-command protect their baseline. They sleep, train, and structure their days to support regulation. This is not self-indulgence, it is maintenance. When your nervous system is stable, emotional reactions slow down naturally. You gain space between stimulus and response. That space restores choice. From that place, you do not need to force calm. Calm becomes your default. When the body is mastered, the mind follows. Emotional self-command stops being a struggle and becomes a state you can return to at will.
Reaction is automatic. Response is chosen. The difference between the two defines emotional self-command. When you react, your behavior is dictated by impulse, habit, or fear. When you respond, your behavior reflects intention, values, and awareness. Most relational mistakes happen in reaction. Words are said too quickly. Decisions are made to relieve discomfort rather than to preserve self-respect. Psychological advantage comes from creating distance between what happens and what you do next. That distance does not appear by accident. It is trained. Responding instead of reacting begins with delay. Time is the simplest and most powerful filter. Even a brief pause interrupts emotional momentum. It allows intensity to pass and perspective to return. Silence is not avoidance, it is regulation. When you do not immediately explain, defend, or justify, you regain control of your inner state. This does not mean withholding communication, it means choosing the moment and manner deliberately. Another element of response is clarity of standard. When your values are clear, decisions become easier. You are not inventing yourself in the moment. You are executing a pre-existing code. This reduces internal conflict and hesitation. Reaction asks, how do I feel right now? Response asks, who do I choose to be here? That shift changes outcomes consistently. Responding also requires emotional tolerance. Discomfort often pressures men into reaction. Silence feels risky. Uncertainty feels threatening. Responding means allowing discomfort to exist without acting to eliminate it immediately. This tolerance builds strength. Each time you remain composed under pressure, your nervous system learns that urgency is survivable. Over time, triggers lose their authority. Responding instead of reacting also changes how others engage with you. When emotional hooks no longer work, dynamics shift. Conversations slow. Respect increases. Control attempts fail quietly. You are no longer predictable. You are steady. This steadiness does not push people away. It grounds interactions. Emotional self-command is not about winning moments. It is about choosing alignment over impulse consistently. When response replaces reaction, behavior stabilizes. When behavior stabilizes, identity strengthens. From that place, control loses relevance because your actions are no longer accessible on demand.
Chapter 4. Independence as Power. Independence is not isolation, it is self-direction. A life that does not beg is a life that is not organized around approval, reassurance, or emotional bargaining. Many men believe independence means emotional distance, but true independence is structural. It is built through purpose, routine, and commitment to something larger than validation. When your life has direction, relationships become part of it rather than the center of it. This shift changes everything. A man whose schedule, goals, and identity exist independently does not need to cling. He shows up because he chooses to, not because he fears losing connection. This removes pressure. Pressure is what drains attraction. Independence also restores leverage internally. When your sense of meaning is sourced from work, growth, health, or contribution, emotional fluctuations in relationships lose their power to destabilize you. You are no longer negotiating your behavior to preserve access. You are expressing yourself from a place of sufficiency. This sufficiency is felt, not announced. Building such a life requires honest effort. Empty busyness does not create independence. Alignment does. Your actions must move you towards something you respect. When effort feels meaningful, confidence grows naturally. You stop asking whether you are enough because your days answer that question for you. Independence also sharpens boundaries. When your life is full, time becomes valuable. You no longer overextend, over-explain, or overcompensate. You choose where energy goes. This selectivity communicates self-respect. A life that does not beg, does not chase attention or fear absence. It moves forward regardless. From that position, connection becomes a choice rather than a need. Attraction grows where freedom exists. When your life stands on its own, control has nothing to attach to. What remains is genuine interest grounded in autonomy.
Presence has value only when absence has weight. Many men try to increase their importance by giving more time, more attention, and more availability. What actually happens is dilution. When you are always accessible, your presence loses contrast. Psychological advantage comes from having a life full enough that your absence is natural, not strategic. It is not withdrawal used as a tactic. It is the byproduct of direction. When your absence is purposeful, it communicates self-respect without explanation. It signals that your time is governed by priorities rather than emotional demand. This creates gravity. People notice what is not always available. Absence also reveals dynamics clearly. When you step back without drama, reactions surface. Some respond with respect, others with anxiety or control attempts. This information is valuable. It shows whether connection is based on mutual choice or emotional dependency. Men who fear absence often fear being forgotten. This fear leads to overcompensation. Messages become frequent. Availability becomes constant. Over time, this creates familiarity without mystery. Attraction fades not because of distance, but because of predictability. When your absence is calm and unannounced, it restores polarity. It creates space for desire to move freely rather than being managed. Absence also protects your nervous system. Constant engagement creates emotional noise. Stepping away restores clarity. You return grounded instead of reactive. This steadiness is felt immediately. Conversations change. Tension reduces. Control attempts lose urgency. Importantly, absence should never be used to punish or manipulate. That energy is unstable and transparent. True absence is neutral. It carries no demand. It does not seek reaction. It simply exists because your life continues. Over time, this neutrality reshapes dynamics. Others adjust to your rhythm rather than pulling you into theirs.
When your presence is intentional and your absence is unforced, you stop needing to assert value. It is assumed. In that space, respect replaces pressure, attraction replaces anxiety, and control fades because there is nothing to manage.
Chapter 5. Boundaries Without Explanation. Saying no is one of the clearest expressions of self-respect, yet many men struggle with it because they fear conflict, rejection, or misunderstanding. Defensiveness enters when no is treated as something that must be justified. The moment you feel compelled to explain, soften, or apologize excessively, you signal uncertainty about your own boundary. Psychological advantage comes from clarity, not persuasion. A clean no does not require emotional armor. It requires conviction. Boundaries are not negotiations. They are statements of alignment. When you say no without defensiveness, you communicate that your decision is settled internally. This removes the invitation for debate. People argue with uncertainty, not certainty. Defensiveness creates openings. Calm refusal closes them. Saying no effectively begins with owning your priorities. If your values are unclear, boundaries feel arbitrary. When priorities are defined, refusal feels natural. You are not rejecting the other person. You are choosing your direction. This distinction matters. Tone carries more weight than content. A calm, neutral tone signals stability. A tense or apologetic tone signals doubt. Others respond accordingly. Another key is brevity. Over-explaining dilutes authority. Each additional sentence creates a hook for negotiation. A simple, respectful refusal preserves dignity on both sides. It does not escalate. It does not seek approval. It stands. Saying no without defensiveness also requires tolerance for discomfort. Some people will react negatively. That reaction is information, not a command. Holding your boundary without escalation trains your nervous system to remain steady under pressure. Over time, this steadiness becomes expected. People adjust. Respect follows consistency. Boundaries enforced through argument exhaust you. Boundaries held through calm action conserve energy. When you stop defending your no, you stop needing validation for your standards. This shifts dynamics quietly. You are no longer managing reactions. You are honoring alignment. From that place, control attempts lose traction because your decisions are not contingent on agreement. Over-explaining is rarely about clarity. It is about seeking acceptance. When you feel compelled to justify your decisions in detail, you reveal uncertainty about your right to make them. This uncertainty invites pushback. Psychological advantage comes from understanding that respect is not created through persuasion, it is created through coherence. The more you explain, the more you signal that your boundary is negotiable. Each added reason becomes something that can be argued against, minimized, or dismissed. What began as a decision turns into a debate. Respect erodes in that space. Over-explaining also shifts focus away from alignment and toward approval. Instead of standing in your choice, you attempt to make it comfortable for the other person. This comfort-seeking weakens authority. A boundary that requires agreement to stand is not a boundary, it is a request. Men who over-explain often believe they are being considerate or emotionally intelligent. In reality, they are outsourcing confidence. Clear communication does not require exhaustive detail, it requires ownership. When your reasons are solid internally, they do not need to be performed externally. Silence often communicates certainty more effectively than words. Another cost of over-explaining is emotional exposure. The more you reveal your internal reasoning, the more material is available for pressure, guilt, or manipulation. This is not about secrecy, it is about discretion. Not everyone deserves access to your internal process. Psychological advantage involves choosing what to share and what to keep grounded within yourself.
Brevity protects stability. A simple statement delivered calmly closes the loop. It does not invite reaction. It does not escalate. It stands on its own. Over time, this changes how people interact with you. They stop probing for leverage because none is offered. Decisions are accepted more quickly because resistance finds no foothold. When you stop over-explaining, you stop asking for permission to be aligned. Respect grows not because others understand every reason, but because they feel the solidity behind your choice.
Chapter 6. Masculine Frame. Your frame is the internal structure that determines how you interpret events, respond to challenges, and carry yourself under stress. It is not a persona or performance, it is the lens through which you experience reality. When your frame is weak, pressure reshapes you. When your frame is solid, pressure reveals you. Psychological advantage comes from holding your frame regardless of emotional turbulence, disagreement, or uncertainty. Many men lose their frame when challenged. They become defensive, over-explain, seek reassurance, or escalate emotionally. Each of these responses signals instability. Holding your frame means staying rooted in your values and perspective without needing to force agreement. You do not need to convince others of your reality. You simply operate from it. This calm certainty reduces tension and shifts dynamics naturally. Pressure tests frame because it introduces stakes. Fear of loss, rejection, or conflict tempts you to abandon alignment in exchange for short-term relief. Men who hold frame accept discomfort as part of self-respect. They tolerate misunderstanding without rushing to correct it. They remain composed when outcomes are unclear. This composure is felt immediately. It communicates authority without dominance. Holding frame also requires restraint. Not every comment deserves response. Not every challenge requires engagement. Choosing when not to react is as important as knowing when to act. Silence, when grounded, preserves power. It prevents emotional escalation and keeps control internal. Over time, people adjust to this steadiness. They sense that pressure will not move you. This removes the incentive to apply it. Frame is reinforced through consistency. When your words and actions align repeatedly, trust forms internally and externally. You become predictable in the right way. Others know what to expect because you do not shift with emotion. In moments that unsettle others, you remain centered. That difference creates contrast. Holding your frame under pressure is not about being unyielding. It is about being unshaken. When your inner structure holds, control loses relevance because nothing external can override your direction. Negotiating your worth is one of the fastest ways to give it away. This negotiation does not always happen out loud. It happens internally, in moments where you compromise standards to avoid discomfort, silence yourself to preserve harmony, or accept behavior that conflicts with self-respect. Each time you do this, you teach others how to treat you. Psychological advantage begins when you stop bargaining with your own value. Worth is not something proven through effort, explanation, or sacrifice. It is something demonstrated through consistency. When you negotiate your worth, you imply that it is conditional. Conditional worth invites testing. Testing invites control. Men who stop negotiating their worth remove the incentive for these dynamics entirely. This does not require arrogance or hostility. It requires clarity. You know what you stand for and what you will not tolerate. You do not announce it repeatedly. You live it. When boundaries are crossed, you respond through action rather than argument. This response is calm and proportionate. It is not reactive. It is aligned. Over time, this alignment becomes visible. Others sense that persuasion will not move you because your decisions are already made internally. Negotiating worth often comes from fear of loss of connection, approval, or opportunity. Men with psychological advantage accept that some losses are necessary to preserve integrity. They choose long-term self-respect over short-term comfort. This choice stabilizes identity. When identity is stable, behavior becomes predictable in a grounded way. You no longer overextend to be chosen. You allow alignment to select for you. This reduces anxiety and restores leverage internally. Stopping negotiation also changes communication. Your words become fewer and more deliberate. You do not seek validation through explanation. Silence becomes comfortable. Presence becomes sufficient. This does not push people away. It filters dynamics. Those who respect boundaries remain. Those who require control drift away. That separation is not a failure. It is alignment at work. When you stop negotiating your worth, control loses relevance. There is nothing to bargain over. Your value is not on the table. It is embodied.
Chapter 7. Emotional Gravity. Confidence is often mistaken for volume, intensity, or display. Many men believe they must project certainty constantly, dominate conversations, or assert opinions aggressively to be seen as strong. This is performative confidence. It relies on validation and collapses under pressure. Calm presence, on the other hand, does not need reinforcement. It is quiet, grounded, and stable. Psychological advantage comes from the latter. Calm presence is felt immediately. It shows in posture, pacing, tone, and restraint. You are not rushing to prove yourself or fill silence. You are comfortable occupying space without demanding attention. This comfort signals self-trust. Performative confidence signals insecurity because it needs an audience. Calm presence does not. Emotional gravity forms when others begin to adjust to your rhythm rather than pulling you into theirs. Conversations slow down around you. Reactions soften. Tension dissipates. This is not because you are passive, but because you are regulated. Your nervous system is steady, and that steadiness influences the environment. People mirror emotional states unconsciously. When you are calm, others settle. When you are reactive, others escalate. Calm presence also preserves leverage. You do not give away emotional information unnecessarily. You listen more than you speak. When you do speak, words land with weight because they are not constant. Silence becomes a tool rather than a threat. Performative confidence fills silence to avoid discomfort. Calm presence allows silence to exist. That difference changes dynamics quickly. Another aspect of emotional gravity is consistency. You are the same person across contexts. You do not shift personality to gain approval. This predictability builds trust. Others know where you stand without needing explanation. Over time, this creates attraction without effort. Calm presence is not weakness, it is restraint. It allows you to respond rather than react, and to influence without force. When presence is grounded, confidence no longer needs performance. It becomes an atmosphere. That atmosphere draws respect, curiosity, and connection naturally, without control or manipulation.
Stability has become rare because most people live in a constant state of stimulation, comparison, and emotional reactivity. Attention is fragmented. Nervous systems are overstimulated. Identity is negotiated daily through external feedback. In this environment, emotional steadiness stands out immediately. Psychological advantage comes from being the person who does not sway with every shift in mood, opinion, or circumstance. Stability is attractive because it creates relief. It removes uncertainty from interaction. When someone is stable, you do not have to manage their emotions, anticipate volatility, or walk on eggshells. That sense of safety is powerful. Many men underestimate how exhausting emotional unpredictability feels to others. Mood swings, overreactions, and inconsistent behavior create tension even when intentions are good. Stability dissolves that tension. It allows connection to feel effortless rather than managed. This does not mean being emotionally flat. It means being emotionally regulated. You still feel deeply, but your emotions do not spill outward uncontrollably. You process internally and respond deliberately. This containment creates trust. People feel that situations will not spiral around you. Stability is also attractive because it signals self-leadership. When you can govern your inner state, you appear capable of governing your life. This competence is felt without explanation. It does not need to be announced. It shows in how you handle delays, disagreement, and uncertainty. While others rush to control outcomes, you remain composed. That contrast creates gravity. Another reason stability is rare is that it requires patience. You must tolerate discomfort without discharging it onto others. You must resist the urge to seek immediate relief through reaction or reassurance. Most people avoid this work. Those who do not become anchors in unstable environments. Over time, people lean toward what feels solid. Stability does not chase attraction. It allows attraction to come forward naturally. When you are steady, others can relax into themselves. Desire grows where there is space and safety. In a world driven by volatility, emotional stability becomes a distinguishing feature. It is not flashy, it is not loud, but it is deeply compelling. This is why those who master it rarely need to pursue control. Their steadiness already leads.
Chapter 8. Power Dynamics Without Games. Power dynamics exist whether they are acknowledged or ignored. They are not created by manipulation or intention. They emerge naturally wherever emotion, desire, and investment are present. Psychological advantage comes from seeing these dynamics clearly without trying to exploit them. Many men either deny power dynamics entirely or become obsessed with controlling them. Both approaches create blindness. Clarity sits in observation. When you can see dynamics without reacting to them, you stop being moved by them. Dynamics reveal themselves through behavior, not words. Who initiates contact? Who adjusts plans? Who seeks reassurance? Who tolerates misalignment? These patterns show where emotional weight sits. When you are unaware of them, you are influenced unconsciously. When you see them, you regain choice. Seeing clearly does not mean correcting or confronting everything. Most dynamics shift naturally when you stop feeding them. Over-explaining, chasing, and reacting reinforce imbalance. Calm consistency dissolves it. Another key element is neutrality. When you interpret behavior without emotional charge, information becomes useful instead of threatening. You stop personalizing shifts in tone or attention. Instead, you observe what changes and what remains stable. This removes fear from analysis. Fear clouds judgment. Neutrality restores accuracy. Seeing dynamics clearly also requires honesty with yourself. You must notice when you are overinvested, when you are tolerating too much, or when you are acting from fear of loss. This self-observation is uncomfortable, but it is freeing. Control thrives where denial exists. Awareness removes its foundation. Importantly, clarity does not require action in every moment. Sometimes the most powerful move is to do nothing and let patterns reveal themselves fully. Time exposes misalignment better than confrontation. When you stop trying to manage dynamics, they become easier to read. Over time, this clarity shifts your behavior subtly. You stop playing roles, you stop compensating, you stop negotiating your position emotionally. Others feel this change without it being named. Dynamics rebalance not through force, but through absence of reaction. When you see clearly, you stop participating unconsciously. From that place, control loses relevance. You are no longer inside the game. You are aware of it.
Competing for control is one of the most exhausting and least effective dynamics a man can enter. It turns connection into a contest and replaces presence with performance. Many men do not realize they are competing. They feel the pressure to win arguments, maintain position, or prove independence. This pressure signals insecurity, not strength. Psychological advantage comes from refusing to engage in control contests altogether. When you compete for control, you accept the premise that power must be taken, defended, or displayed. This belief traps you in reaction. Every move becomes a response to the other person's behavior rather than an expression of your own alignment. Refusing to compete breaks this loop. You do not need to dominate, counter, or outmaneuver. You simply remain steady. Steadiness is disarming because it offers no resistance to push against. Control contests thrive on tension. Remove tension and the contest collapses. Refusal does not mean passivity. It means choosing self-direction over outcome management. You act based on your standards, not on how behavior might be interpreted. You say no when needed. You disengage when misaligned. You remain present without proving anything. This removes the incentive for power struggles. Over time, people stop testing what cannot be moved. Another reason refusal works is that control competition creates polarity in the wrong direction. It invites escalation and drains attraction. When you stop competing, interaction becomes lighter. Curiosity replaces resistance. Respect replaces challenge. This shift is subtle but decisive. Refusing to compete also protects your nervous system. Control contests activate stress responses and keep you in vigilance. When you opt out, your body settles. Clarity returns. Decisions improve. This calm becomes your baseline. Others feel it and adjust accordingly. In many cases, the desire to control fades when it finds no participation. The dynamic loses energy and dissolves. Refusing to compete is not about winning by default. It is about recognizing that the game itself is a distraction. When you stop playing, you reclaim focus. When focus is reclaimed, direction stabilizes. From that place, influence happens naturally, without effort or force.
Chapter 9. Desire thrives on uncertainty. Polarity depends on tension, and tension requires space. When everything is predictable, desire loses momentum. Many men believe consistency means revealing everything, being constantly available, and removing all uncertainty. What actually disappears is polarity. Psychological advantage comes from understanding that stability and mystery are not opposites. Stability anchors trust. Desire fuels desire. Predictability kills polarity when it removes space for curiosity to move. When your responses, availability, and emotional reactions become fully anticipated, interaction flattens. There is nothing to lean into. This does not mean playing games or withholding affection. It means allowing life to have dimension beyond the relationship. When your world is full, your attention is selective. This selectivity creates natural uncertainty without manipulation. Desire thrives where interest is present but not guaranteed. Another source of predictability is emotional transparency without regulation. Sharing every thought, worry, or reaction collapses internal space. It turns connection into constant processing. While honesty matters, timing and containment matter more. When emotions are regulated internally first, what is shared carries clarity rather than weight. This preserves polarity. Predictability also emerges when approval is sought. When behavior is optimized to please, scripts become routine. Authenticity fades. Polarity requires individuality. It requires a sense that you are choosing connection, not managing it. Men with psychological advantage remain consistent in standards but flexible in expression. They are reliable without being routine. They engage without orbiting. This balance maintains attraction over time. Uncertainty also protects your nervous system. You are not performing a role, you are living a life. That authenticity is felt immediately. When others cannot fully predict you because you are guided by purpose rather than reaction, curiosity remains alive. Predictability kills polarity when it removes autonomy. When autonomy is preserved, desire has room to breathe. In relationships, safety creates foundation, mystery creates motion. When both exist together, attraction endures without control, effort, or performance.
Space is often misunderstood as distance, silence, or emotional withdrawal. In reality, space is autonomy preserved. It is the ability to remain connected without collapsing into constant proximity or reassurance. Many men either smother connection or disappear entirely. Both behaviors are reactions to fear. Psychological advantage lies in creating space naturally, without signaling threat, punishment, or disinterest. Space without withdrawal begins with a full life. When your time, energy, and attention are invested in purpose, health, and growth, space appears organically. You are not stepping back to provoke reaction, you are moving forward in alignment. This distinction is felt immediately. Withdrawal creates anxiety. Purposeful space creates respect. Creating space also requires emotional regulation. When space is created from calm rather than frustration, it does not trigger insecurity. You remain warm, grounded, and present when you engage, but you do not linger unnecessarily. This balance preserves polarity. It allows desire to move freely without being managed. Another element is resisting the urge to fill silence. Silence does not require explanation. When you are comfortable with pauses, others are given room to move toward you. Chasing eliminates pursuit. Space invites it. This does not mean withholding affection or communication. It means allowing interaction to breathe. Space also protects your identity. When your sense of self remains intact regardless of proximity, you avoid emotional entanglement. You do not merge identities or lose direction. This autonomy is attractive because it signals strength without control. Creating space without withdrawal also prevents resentment. When you honor your rhythm, you do not overextend and then pull away emotionally. Consistency replaces push and pull. Over time, this steadiness reshapes dynamics. Others stop testing distance because it is no longer charged. Interaction becomes lighter. Desire stabilizes. Space is not absence, it is room for movement. When created intentionally, it enhances connection rather than threatening it. In that space, attraction remains alive without manipulation, and control becomes irrelevant because autonomy is intact on both sides.
Chapter 10. Self-respect over outcome. Approval is fleeting. Standards are permanent. When decisions are made to secure approval, direction becomes unstable because approval shifts with mood, circumstance, and perception. Psychological advantage comes from choosing standards even when approval is uncertain or withheld. This choice anchors behavior to identity rather than reaction. Many men compromise standards to preserve connection, believing flexibility will maintain harmony. What actually happens is erosion. Each compromise weakens self-respect, and that loss is felt internally long before it is noticed externally. Choosing standards over approval requires clarity. You must know what you will tolerate, what you will invest in, and what you will walk away from. Without this clarity, approval becomes the default guide. With it, decisions simplify. You are no longer asking how something will be received, you are asking whether it aligns. This shift reduces anxiety because outcomes no longer define worth. Standards also protect emotional energy. When you act in alignment, regret diminishes. Even difficult choices feel clean. You may lose approval in the short term, but you gain internal stability. That stability compounds. Over time, people sense that your behavior is not negotiable through pressure or persuasion. This consistency creates respect, even when disagreement exists. Choosing standards does not mean being rigid or unkind. It means being coherent. Flexibility exists within values, not at their expense. You can listen, adapt, and empathize without abandoning yourself. Approval seeking demands performance. Standards demand presence. One is exhausting, the other is grounding. Another benefit of choosing standards is freedom from outcome obsession. When approval is not the goal, fear loosens its grip. You are less reactive to silence, disagreement, or uncertainty. This calm changes dynamics subtly. Interaction becomes less tense. Control attempts lose leverage because they rely on fear of disapproval. When that fear is absent, influence fades. Over time, a man who consistently chooses standards becomes predictable in the right way. Others know where he stands. That clarity is rare. It signals self-leadership. And self-leadership is far more compelling than approval ever could be.
Walking away is often framed as a dramatic act fueled by frustration, pride, or punishment. In reality, the most powerful exits are quiet. Walking away without anger is not rejection, it is alignment. Psychological advantage comes from leaving situations that no longer respect your standards without needing to prove a point or extract validation. Anger signals attachment. It reveals that something unresolved still holds emotional weight. Calm departure signals completion. Many men stay too long because they fear loss more than misalignment. They tolerate behavior that erodes self-respect, hoping effort or explanation will restore balance. Over time, resentment builds. This resentment leaks into tone, patience, and presence. What began as tolerance becomes quiet self-betrayal. Walking away early, calmly, prevents this erosion. It preserves dignity. Walking away without anger requires emotional regulation. You acknowledge disappointment internally without discharging it outward. You do not need the other person to understand or agree. Closure is not something you receive, it is something you grant yourself. This internal closure frees you from the need to revisit or justify your decision. Another element is acceptance. Not every connection is meant to last. Some dynamics reveal misalignment only over time. Ending them does not mean failure, it means clarity arrived. Men with psychological advantage do not cling to potential, they respond to reality. Walking away also reinforces identity. Each time you choose self-respect over outcome, you strengthen trust in yourself. This trust becomes confidence, not loud confidence, but grounded certainty. Over time, this certainty reshapes how others interact with you. People sense that access to you is not guaranteed, it is earned through alignment. Importantly, walking away without anger leaves no emotional hooks behind. There is nothing to pull you back into explanation, debate, or regret. You move forward cleanly. In relationships and in life, this ability creates freedom. You are no longer trapped by fear of loss or desire for control. You choose direction, and direction, once chosen consistently, becomes power.
Chapter 11. Becoming Unshakable. Emotional non-attachment does not mean indifference or lack of care. It means your inner stability is not dependent on how others behave, feel, or respond. Many men confuse attachment with love, believing that intensity proves depth. In reality, intensity often proves dependence. Psychological advantage comes from caring deeply without surrendering emotional autonomy. When attachment governs behavior, fear enters quietly. Fear of loss, fear of change, fear of not being chosen. These fears drive reaction. Emotional non-attachment removes their leverage. It allows you to experience emotion fully without being ruled by it. This begins with recognizing that emotions are experiences, not commands. They arise, peak, and pass. Acting on them immediately gives them authority. Observing them restores choice. Non-attachment creates space between feeling and action. In that space, clarity lives. You can choose responses aligned with values rather than impulses driven by anxiety. This is not suppression. Suppression stores emotion and intensifies it later. Non-attachment allows emotion to move through without dictating behavior. Another aspect of non-attachment is outcome independence. You engage sincerely, but you are not anchored to a specific result. You are open to connection, but not defined by it. This openness paradoxically strengthens attraction because it removes pressure. When nothing needs to be forced, interaction feels lighter. Emotional non-attachment also strengthens resilience. When situations change or end, recovery is faster because identity remains intact. You are not rebuilding yourself from loss, you are continuing forward. This steadiness is felt by others. It communicates maturity and self-trust. Over time, people adjust their behavior around you because emotional volatility no longer works. Manipulation fails where attachment is absent. Drama loses fuel. Calm becomes the norm. Emotional non-attachment is not emotional distance, it is emotional sovereignty. You feel, you care, you engage, but you remain centered. From that place, nothing external can destabilize you for long. When attachment loosens, control disappears. What remains is freedom grounded in self-command.
The moment nothing can be used against you is the moment you become unshakable. Control relies on exposure, fear, and reaction. When your emotional state, identity, and decisions are no longer dependent on external approval, leverage disappears. This does not mean hiding or closing off. It means being internally resolved. When you accept your flaws, limits, and choices fully, there is nothing left to threaten. Psychological advantage comes from this completion. Many men are controlled through guilt, shame, or the fear of being misunderstood. They explain themselves to avoid judgment or soften boundaries to avoid conflict. This creates openings. When you no longer need to defend who you are, those openings close. Criticism loses power when it does not challenge your self-respect. Silence loses power when it does not trigger anxiety. Withdrawal loses power when you are not afraid of being alone. When nothing can be used against you, emotional manipulation fails quietly. Provocations fall flat. Ultimatums lose urgency. You are not compelled to react because there is no internal instability to exploit. This does not make you cold, it makes you clear. You can listen without absorbing, engage without chasing, and disengage without resentment. Another element of being unshakable is acceptance of outcome. When you accept that not every connection, desire, or situation will align with you, fear dissolves. You stop bargaining with reality, you respond to it. This acceptance stabilizes behavior. You are no longer trying to control perception or preserve potential at the cost of integrity. Over time, this posture reshapes interactions. People sense that emotional pressure will not move you. They adjust or drift. Both outcomes are clean. When nothing can be used against you, you become difficult to manipulate, not because you are guarded, but because you are complete. Control thrives on unfinished business. Completion removes it. From that place, presence is calm, boundaries are natural, and influence is effortless. You are not reacting to the world. You are meeting it from a position that cannot be pulled apart.
Chapter 12. The Man She Can't Control. Identity integration is the point where everything you have practiced stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like who you are. You are no longer applying techniques or monitoring behavior. Your responses flow naturally from an internal structure that is stable and complete. Psychological advantage reaches maturity here. Control loses relevance because there is nothing fragmented to pull apart. Many men struggle not because they lack knowledge, but because their identity is split. One part seeks approval, another seeks autonomy. One part wants peace, another wants validation. This internal conflict creates inconsistency. Inconsistency invites testing. Testing invites control. Integration resolves this by aligning values, standards, and behavior into a single direction. When identity is integrated, decisions become simple. You do not ask how to act to be liked or chosen. You act from who you are. This removes hesitation. Hesitation signals uncertainty. Certainty grounded in self-respect creates gravity. Others feel that you are not performing or adapting yourself to be received. You are expressing coherence. Identity integration also stabilizes emotion. You are no longer surprised by your own reactions because they align with your values. When discomfort appears, it does not threaten identity. It is processed and released. This emotional consistency removes leverage. There is no version of you that needs rescuing or reassurance. Integration also ends inner negotiation. You stop bargaining with yourself about boundaries, standards, or direction. When something is misaligned, action follows calmly. There is no drama because there is no doubt. This clarity is deeply attractive because it is rare. Most people live divided between who they are and who they want to appear to be. When those layers collapse into one, presence becomes powerful without effort. Identity integration does not make you rigid, it makes you whole. You can adapt without losing center and engage without surrendering autonomy. From this place, control has nowhere to land. You are not resisting it. You have outgrown the need for it to matter.
Living from inner authority means your decisions are guided by alignment rather than pressure. You no longer look outward for permission, reassurance, or confirmation before acting. Your sense of direction comes from within, grounded in values you have tested through experience. Psychological advantage is fully expressed here. Control loses all relevance because influence requires access and your center is no longer external. Many men live from borrowed authority. They take cues from reactions, moods, or approval signals. This creates constant adjustment and self-monitoring. Inner authority ends this cycle. You trust your judgment because it is consistent. You have seen yourself hold standards, regulate emotion, and walk away when necessary. Evidence replaces doubt. When authority is internal, communication changes. You speak less, but with intention. You listen without seeking validation. You do not rush to fill silence or correct perception. Presence becomes sufficient. Others feel that you are not trying to manage them or the outcome. This absence of pressure is grounding. It allows connection to exist without manipulation. Living from inner authority also simplifies conflict. Disagreement no longer threatens identity. You can hear opposing views without needing to defend yourself. You respond calmly or disengage without resentment. This stability shifts power dynamics naturally. People stop testing boundaries that do not move. Another aspect of inner authority is acceptance of consequence. When decisions are made from alignment, you accept outcomes fully. There is no regret fueled by self-betrayal. Even loss feels clean. This emotional cleanliness strengthens confidence over time. You become predictable in the right way. Others know that persuasion, guilt, or pressure will not move you. This does not isolate you. It filters interactions. Those aligned with your direction remain. Those seeking control drift away. Both outcomes preserve integrity. Living from inner authority is not dominance. It is self-governance. When you govern yourself fully, no one else needs to. Control dissolves not through resistance, but through irrelevance. This is the man she cannot control, not because he resists, but because he stands firmly within himself.
Conclusion. Control ends where self-mastery begins. Becoming the man she cannot control was never about changing her behavior. It was about changing your relationship with yourself. Throughout this audiobook, the pattern should now be clear. Control only exists where there is emotional dependency, internal conflict, and fear of loss. When those dissolve, control has nothing to attach to. You do not become unreachable or cold. You become grounded. Your emotions are felt but not broadcast. Your standards are held without explanation. Your direction is chosen without negotiation. This is self-mastery in practice. It is quiet, consistent, and deeply stabilizing. From this place, you no longer try to manage outcomes. You manage alignment. You stop chasing reassurance and start trusting your own judgment. You stop reacting to pressure and start responding from clarity. Relationships feel lighter because you are no longer asking them to complete you. Connection becomes a choice rather than a need. Attraction becomes a response rather than a goal. This shift changes everything. You are no longer pulled into games because you no longer need to win them. You are no longer provoked by silence because silence does not threaten you. You are no longer afraid to walk away because your identity is not dependent on being chosen. What replaces fear is steadiness. What replaces control is respect. This way of operating does not guarantee outcomes, it guarantees integrity. And integrity creates a kind of confidence that does not fade with circumstance. As you move forward, remember that self-mastery is not a one-time achievement. It is a daily practice of regulation, restraint, and alignment. Some days will test you. That is normal. What matters is returning to center without drama. When your inner authority remains intact, dynamics adjust naturally. You do not need to demand respect. You embody it. You do not need to resist control. You make it irrelevant. This is not the end of a lesson. It is the beginning of a way of being. Carry it forward calmly. Let consistency do the work. When you govern yourself fully, the world responds differently.
And from that place, control has no power, because you no longer live in a way that requires it.